So that's what I was telling people, LaQuan. They don't like the record predictions, and I believe there's probably going to be a lot of people dropping in here today being like, how did you pick my team? I picked the 49, like last season. I picked the Lions to make the playoffs and not win a playoff game. Like, what are you talking? Like, how did that prediction work out for you? I'm like, pretty well. Like, I thought I sort of nailed it. I didn't have them, I didn't have them for 14 wins, which I think is fair because like it's difficult. However, I said they're a playoff team. The 49er fans, same thing. Like, I think you guys will go to the playoffs. Oh, you're an idiot. When will you ever I'm like, it's not like I picked you to win 3 games.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. The Commander fans can legit be upset. Like, that's fine. Like, you can.
Would you go with them?
7 wins.
Oh, come on. Rank. I'm kind of mad at you now.
They're not that good.
Come on.
They skated by a lot of smoke and mirrors last season. And now everybody's like, oh, I saw somebody, and I think it was one of the Fox Sports guys who was like, Jane Daniels is already a top 4 quarterback in the NFL. You're like, okay.
No.
I think that's more ridiculous than anything I'm putting out there.
Yes.
Like, it is wild. But you know what? Listen, maybe I'll invite you back next week. We're going to talk about, so I'll let everybody know if you're here and you're like, where's Greg Braggs? He's not here. We're going to talk fantasy tonight because there's not a lot of news. The only thing, if you got your Bears training camp tickets, drop a comment here down below. We'll talk about it, or I'll congratulate you or whatever. In any event, though, we're just going to ask Shane to start the show.
Welcome to our Fantasy Island.
Welcome to Fantasy Island. It's LaQuan Jones along with your friend Adam Rank. Not necessarily talking about, well, you know what? I will tell you to kind of placate everybody who is coming in to talk Bears, because normally this is the time where we do take it to the rank and we ask questions. Today, and this is a big thing. I don't know if this happens for the Rams. For those of you who have not met LaQuan, say hello.
Hey.
He does our Rams podcast. Do people go crazy for training camp tickets for the Rams?
Yeah, man. It's kind of one of those things where the community comes together. It's like, hey, we're all meeting on this date, right? Like, we're hitting those weekend dates because it's kind of tough during the week for everybody. But like, it's one of those things where like, there's excitement. Like, it's some type of football, and like, you get to watch your team peek behind the curtain and see what's going on with some of the players, see the coaches and stuff. Like, it's a big thing, man.
Yeah. We love it too. And everybody today has been posting on Twitter and everything about like, hey, we got our tickets. We're going on July 26th. We're doing this. I'm still working out some plans to see if we're going to be able to go out there this season. Soccer, man, like, it just doesn't end. I can't. My team keeps winning. We keep going. At some point, I feel
that's great.
It was so hilarious because back in December, so the season started in August of last year. And then I remember in December, my birthday fell on one of the practice nights. And then my daughter's birthday is in July. And that's 7 months later. And then her birthday fell on one of the practice nights. I'm like, we're still doing this. It's still going, but it's a lot of fun. And we're having a good time. But right now, we're going to be focusing in on fantasy football, which kind of got underway this week, unofficially, officially. Obviously, you were down at Circa Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago to do the Scott Fish Bowl. A lot of people doing the slow drafts entered it already or started this week. So a lot of fun stuff. Are you officially done with your Scott Fish Bowl draft?
Yeah, we just literally finished on last Friday, and it was one of those things where it turned into a very, very slow draft. And again, you know, I'm not the guy to hit the text message like, yo, OTC, but come on, man. I kind of want to get this over with. It's almost 2 weeks now that we've been done the live draft, you know, but it's expected. You know, it's one of those things that, you know, I'm just happy to be drafting, and it's officially fantasy football season.
Yeah, and I think next season I'm going to petition Scott Fish Bowl to see if I can return a satellite live draft to Orange County, because we were snubbed. Yeah. Last year we had the Scott Fish Bowl Orange County down there in Orange, California. I'm going to try to bring it to Huntington Beach, but let's talk about the here and now. We're going to be talking about wide receivers today, and I'm going to wow you with my tier 1 of wide receivers, and this might be controversial. So Shane, can we pull up tier 1? I just put 2 guys. I think I love a lot of the wide receivers that you're getting, but this is legitimately, I think, for a lot of people, and these are some of the questions that I'm getting, I got a Cameo the other day. You can find me on Cameo. Somebody literally paid for a Cameo, which I'm like, please don't do this, just to ask me Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. They had the 1.01. They said, I'm not going with the running back. I just want a wide receiver. I need to know which one. So if you're sitting there and let's say you said on Tuesday's show that Bijan Robinson is your guy, you've punted on a running back. These two players are available. Are you going with Chase or Justin Jefferson?
I'm going with Jamar Chase. You cannot fade that connection he has with his quarterback, with Joe Burrow. I mean, look, if you're watching Netflix's quarterbacks right now, you see how strong that bond is, and it's only going to keep going to the moon when these guys connect on the field. And that defense is still pretty bad. And Joe Burrow threw the ball 650 times last year. So it's one of those things like high volume, great connection, great production together, man. You got to go with the guy that's going to be obviously Mr. 101 this year.
Yeah, I have a hard time arguing against it. I did point out yesterday that if you're taking Jamar Chase, and this is not like this ruins my season, I would likely not take Chase Brown, who I absolutely love. But you know what? That's fine. And Jamar Chase to me is worth it. I do like Justin Jefferson a lot. And I think that, you know, I always sort of like being in a position where I don't have to choose. Where it's like, oh, like somebody's taking one of these. I would rather be the pick after and be like, well, I got Justin Jefferson. That's fine.
Exactly.
Or I got Jamar Chase. I just don't want any accountability. Like, I don't want to be like, like I was the one who did it. I guess I should have more, put it out there with my chest more. But I think it also stands to reason that it's really not a huge drop off. I think these two guys, Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, are far and away the two best players in the wide receiver room. So that's why I put them in their own tier, because I'm being cheeky. Shane, let's go to
a Bluey reference you just threw out there. My kids say that all the time, and I'm like, where are you guys learning from these shows?
Is it that, or is it Peppa Pig? Oh, you're a little cheeky.
It's cheeky.
Did you know? I'm trying to remember the age of your children, but my daughter was speaking speaking during the pandemic, and that's when we watched a lot of Peppa Pig, and she was like, hello, are you kidding me?
That is hilarious.
A lot of that stuff. And so for those of you, Captain Scott Winks is back from the river, so he still listens. He doesn't watch us. He listens as an audio podcast. So let me go through. I have 8 names here: Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, Brian Thomas Jr., Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Drake London, and I'm putting Ladd McConkey into this tier, which might be a little bit controversial. I might actually be doing it for the aesthetic. However, for those of you who are listening, or this is your first time watching us do some of these tiers, what it means is that I have them in my order. However, I do feel like the drop off between Puka Nacua and Drake London is sort of not that big of a fall. So I'm happy with either one of those guys. It all comes down to preference. I know that you love Puka Nacua, and it's not just because you're a Rams fan, but for fantasy purposes, this is not a ranking for anybody who's jumping in here too, who's like, what? Where's DJ? Like, this is fantasy football. This is not who's the best players in the league. Do you have Puka Nacua as the number 3 guy, or is there somebody else that you would prefer?
I don't actually. And it's not that I got him further down. It's actually Malik Neighbors that I have at that 3 spot. And then I will honestly have Puka sitting right there at that 4 spot. This is all semantics. Again, we're not going to argue about one spot. And again, that drop off that we're talking about between Puka and Neighbors, it's not relatively like a huge gap. It's just that Neighbors is probably going to get the ball, 125 catches this year on 170 targets. Like, that's realistic. And I look at him as in that freak tier of like where he is quarterback proof. I mean, Tommy Cutlets was out there throwing him the ball. Drew Lock was out there throwing the ball. A bad Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones. I mean, look, we're looking at Malik Neighbors as a guy that fits in that category in the conversation as the tier 1s, but he has to prove it this year to be in that conversation with Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb, who you got at 5 as well. So I do like this combination. Now, Puka, he sits out of that freak conversation. I know I didn't mention him, Rank, but he sits there in an opportunity to have the system, have the coaching, and have the quarterback that can get him to be in conversation with those guys. I just don't think that he's going to see like the 150 targets or 125 catches, because he has Devontae Adams there.
Does George Pickens hurt or help the development of CeeDee Lamb in Dallas?
I think it helps. And here's why. Because now you don't have to use CD for that entire route tree. You don't have to keep sending him on 9 routes to try to give some life, some spark of this Cowboys offense that it desperately needs. You now give Dak a second option. You now give CD somewhat of a break. I won't say like a complete load off of his back. He is still the number one, but you have different ways to be creative with this offense now. You can go to one or other guys. Like CD said it himself, like he's a wide receiver 1, and so was Pickens. So you have multiple wide receiver 1 options. I just think that Pickens, there might be some games where, he might disappear. That's just how the games in the card might fall. But CD remains the operation, the function of this offense, where CD, he's still going to be a wide receiver 1 at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think it's the same thing with Devontae Adams being in Los Angeles with Puka Nacua. Sometimes it really helps these players excel. I mean, look at Jamar Chase, the production that he puts up with T. Higgins there, doing pretty well himself. Justin Jefferson has always had somebody like Adam Thielen or Jordan Addison there to kind of help push him along. They also have the tight end in Minnesota as well. So there is a lot of stuff going on. So it also it does help these guys because it does take a little bit of the heat off, but then we still like guys like Malik Neighbors, even Amon-Ra St. Brown, who end up being sort of a solo act, not necessarily like 100%. There are guys on those rosters who are capable.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Brian Thomas Jr. though. This is one that, and again, this goes to the tier system, which means, and for a lot of people who play in a variety of leagues, you can do a thing like, well, in one league, I'm going to take Puka Nacua. In another league, I might take Malik Neighbors. I'm starting to really warm up to the fact of if I miss out on the first 2 tier guys, Brian Thomas Jr. might be the dude that I target the most. With the opportunity, Liam Cohen is going to be there running the offense. Obviously, Doug Peterson was expected to be one of these offensive gurus and did not work out. Not to the extent that the Jags fans thought it was going to, or even NFL observers like ourselves. Liam Cohen goes in there, and I do hope that I want him to do well, so his Duval becomes the Duval default. Duval, like that's the kind of thing that people do. I really would not be shocked if Brian Thomas Jr. ends up as the wide receiver 1. And I know a lot of people are like, what about Travis Hunter? I'm like, yeah, again, Travis Hunter to me is probably a better compliment than even like George Pickens or Devontae Adams, because Travis Hunter will draw coverage because of his speed and ability. However, I don't think he's drawing the targets as those other 2 guys might, which will open it up even more. I really do believe that Brian Thomas Jr. has that ability to be the wide receiver 1 this season. How are you feeling about BTJ?
I'm a little hesitant, and it's not because of him. Like the talent is there. We saw the flashes last year of him having that wide receiver 1 but it's just that, with Trevor Mid-Lawrence there, it's like, I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure if we can get that production that we've seen that Liam Cohen having that magic touch on the quarterback, because honestly, like Trevor Lawrence has not wowed us yet. He hasn't shown up to be the second coming of the Andrew Luck and John Elway coming out of college. Like we haven't seen that player. And like, there's always been excuses. It's always the coach. It's the coach. It's the coach. We have the coach this year, right? Liam Cohen comes in, he gets this offense on board. I just fear that, with Brian Thomas Jr., there's really a sense that, him and Travis Hunter can coexist, but how you were saying with Travis Hunter doesn't draw the targets, I think it flips, because when you look at Travis Hunter, you may put him on the outside, he might play that Z, put him in motion, etc. But I think Travis Hunter will do really well and thrive out of that slot, and that's where Christian Kirk was. That's where Parker Washington is now, where Trevor Lawrence, these last couple of years, he's targeted the slot heavily between Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. That's his sweet spot. That's only where we were able to see success of this Jaguars offense. When Calvin Ridley was there, they were having trouble trying to figure out how to utilize him. And it's like, he's your ex. He's your guy. So why is he not performing as the wide receiver one? Why is it not clicking? And you go back and you watch Trevor Lawrence. It's not that he's a bad quarterback. Like I said in his name, Trevor Mid Lawrence. He's just not that guy that brings it up to the next level that can make Brian Thomas Jr. to be sitting here with some of these guys that I'm looking at right now, where I'm just a little hesitant to take him off the board in the first round. Like, second round, it's one round later, it's a couple picks later, but that does make a difference in my team that I'm building. So I think, him getting this first round hype, there could be mistakes in the past where we push Marvin Harrison Jr. at that 112, 111 spot, or it can go back to a pivoted position. Let's go further back where we put Miles Sanders at that 112 or CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Like, we do these things with these young players. We push them up to the first round. Garrett Wilson in recent memory, Chris Olave in recent memory. We do this a lot, and then we get burned, and then we sit back like, oh, what happened? But the flags are there, So I feel like, at least with him, I'm just a little hesitant. Taking him off the board in the first round.
No, and I appreciate you saying that, because it is one of the things too, when you're working your board, is trying to get a sense of how people feel about certain players. Now, it's unfortunate for us because we're out there on Front Street. Everybody knows exactly what we're thinking going into drafts.
Yeah.
So that always, it's good and it's bad. Like last year, it saved me because I really like Travis Etienne as well. And he didn't have the year that a lot of people thought he was going to have, or at least that I thought he was going to have. One of my friends stole him. And I was like, really like, I'm like, you couldn't have done that for Zamir White. But, it's just one of those things where, hey, you know what? And I'm doing it. But I do like the idea of, as much as I do believe he could go out there and be the wide receiver one this season, you also got to play the board. And if you're at the end of the board and somehow CeeDee Lamb is fallen there, I would reason that a lot of people would be more apt to draft CeeDee Lamb as opposed to Brian Thomas Jr. And I would take the risk, knowing that there's no chance that CeeDee Lamb comes back to me, but there is an opportunity for Brian Thomas Jr. too as well. So sometimes you got to play the board, not the player. And there's some of these other guys who are great too. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, I might have downgraded him a little bit. We also have the same issues with Jared Goff, where we're not necessarily sold on him. However, his pass catcher 2 is a running back. His pass catcher 3 is a tight end, maybe. And then we get to J-Mo and those guys. Again, I'm a little, I didn't believe that Amon-Ra St. Brown last year had the season that I wanted him to have, and I'm holding him accountable here. But what do you think about this ranking? Is this a good spot for Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Absolutely. Like, you got him right where I feel as though, like, you got guys like Nico, you got Drake, you got Ladd. I feel a lot more comfortable with Amon-Ra because we're getting durability. We're getting him obviously the number one of that offense, and it's still that connection built with Jared Goff. And it's like, there's always going to be an understanding, get the ball to Amon-Ra. And I know people say he's like a slot merchant or whatever, the kids are saying these days about guys, but he's getting the ball, you know what I mean? And he's producing after the catch. He's a guy that you can heavily target anywhere on the field, the red zone, from the 60-yard line, it don't matter. Like, I'm betting on the talent when I take Amon-Ra off the board. Now, to have those priors or to have those like flags pop up where there's no Ben Johnson, the O-line and et cetera, that's fine, but there's still understanding that he's going to get the ball, at least with the reasoning with Brian Thomas Jr. I have questions at the quarterback position. We have questions of the unknown of Travis Hunter and his usage and his ability to go out there and earn targets. But Amon-Ra, it's in stone. That's his team. Like, it's his offense, so it's going to function through him ultimately at the end of the day.
Do we have issues with Nico Collins, quarterback CJ Stroud last season? I was always stuck, and we talked about this when we were discussing quarterbacks, where it was so tough with CJ Stroud last year because there was no outside of the fantasy production. You could not watch a Texans game and say that CJ Stroud's not good. He is a good player. And you're like, it's just not resulting in fantasy points. And it became really frustrating. And I know there were some injuries, and there was injuries in the wide receiver room. There was also CJ Stroud trying to sun Caleb Williams, which I will never forget. I'll never draft CJ Stroud for that reason again. Like, that was the worst sunning I've ever, like, what? Who are you?
Why did you do that?
Like, you would get like open micers at times who would come up to you and be like, hey man, like, keep at it. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I'm working out jokes here. Like, I'm not showing up at the Martini Blues on a Tuesday night to sit here and do my hard and true tried and true material for a bunch of comics who aren't paying attention, trying to get the wording right on these jokes. So I thought like that was the worst sunning, which actually leads me to not drafting Houston players now this year. But I do like Nico Collins a lot. Do you think that? But we're good even with his quarter. I again, CJ Stroud's a good player. There was nothing wrong with him last year. The fantasy production just wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at CJ Stroud last year, there was a lot going on between the injuries on the wide receivers, but that O-line was god-awful. It was the second most sacked quarterback, I mean, behind your guy, Caleb Williams. So it's like you can't really run an offense with CJ Stroud and expect that 2023 production if he's not having time to do anything, if he doesn't have the right guys out there. I mean, there was a time, where, Stephon Diggs was there, biggest playmaker out there, but then he gets hurt, and then Tank Dell gets hurt, and then Nico gets hurt, and then it's like, okay, who's left? Dalton Schultz? Like, what do you want me to go out here and do? We can't attack vertically where all the fantasy points are, and with that O-line the way it is, it's like, I guess I'll hand it off to Joe Mixon. Or, well, Joe Mixon's out for 3 games. All right, I guess I'll hand it to Damian Pierce. But it's like, these are all things that happened last year. These are all ups and downs of the roller coasters that happened in Houston, to where he couldn't really find stability into being that fantasy QB1 that we know he can be. Now, he's not a mobile quarterback, so he's reliant on the offense functioning at a high power to be able to create these scoring opportunities to find the end zone. And that's exactly why we fell in love with him in his rookie season, but it was just a complete disaster last season. So I get the hesitation on Nico as well, with his health, with his history and stuff, but he's a dynamic player. Like, he's a player that I am happy to watch on Sundays if he's on my fantasy team or not. No,
100%. And again, this is one of those guys who I'm hoping falls to the second round. Like, if I get Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, by some miracle, if Nico Collins lands there, I'm happy. If Drake London lands there, this is one that these next 2 players, Drake London and Ladd McConkey, will get a lot of pushback, because as we talk about the tiers, I don't anticipate a situation where I'm drafting Drake London over Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, or Ladd McConkey, but I do want to give them their credit, because I don't want people to be morose if you end up with Ladd McConkey or Drake London, because both of these guys are excellent. Do you think with Michael Penix Jr., Drake London can kind of be the receiver we've wanted him to be over the last couple of years?
Absolutely. And I just sent a tweet yesterday about Drake London and how ridiculous his production was with Michael Penix in those 3 games. Small sample size. But when you get a guy that's producing like a 39% target share and he's being targeted on 41% of his routes, how could you shy away from that? And then when you look at the mini camp interview that Michael Penix had, and he basically was asked if they think that Drake London's underrated, like he's not appreciated. And he said they will. They will this season. And I look at Drake London, like, to me, he's like Shane McMahon. He's a performer. He's underrated. He's not appreciated, but he goes out there and does the damn job at a high level. And he's able to hold his weight out there with the rest of these guys on the list. And I think Drake London, again, is in talks of a top 7, top 5 fantasy season, just based on the connection that we saw in that small sample size. Like, this guy was going out there having these huge games in the last 3 seasons, where that momentum is going to carry into this season, because that connection was beautiful. I was happy as hell to be in the playoffs with Drake London on my roster, because Rank, me and you were on the same ship last year. We were standing tall, saying it with our chests, like, Drake London will be a top 7, top 5 wide receiver. And that's exactly what happened, just based on the formula that is there. Drake London, he gets all the hate from all the analytical nerd folks out there, like, oh, he can't separate. It doesn't matter. Look at George Pickens. He can't separate. And the same hype we give Marvin Harrison, which was at the bottom of the table in separation rate, these guys are physical wide receivers, and that's exactly what Drake London is. He's able to box you out, use his hands, high point the ball, and he's a red zone target. So it's like, how can we sit here and look at Drake London? Now, Rank, you got him kind of low, but how could we look at him and say,
you think he's low here? Like, who would you slot him ahead of? Oh, you would put him ahead of Brian Thomas Jr. Are you taking him ahead of Nico and Amon-Ra St. Brown?
I'll take him over Nico. I would think to take him over Amon-Ra, just based on the questions that we have with Detroit. Like, that's a legit decision to make there. And I think there's not really that many question marks or red flags in Atlanta because, again, look at the formula of the offense. It's a ton of motion, a ton of confusion, and Zach Robinson, we talked about it yesterday. Like, he's a guy that's from the McVay tree. There's going to be creativity, and there's an understanding to get the ball to your best playmakers, and that's it.
No, I agree. I'm not going to argue with you. As a matter of fact, as you're looking at these tiers, it is difficult because Puka, Malik, and CeeDee Lamb almost deserve like a 1.5 tier where I don't think that any of those guys challenge Jamar and Justin Jefferson, but I do think that they're ahead of Brian Thomas Jr., Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, and Drake London could leap up ahead of all of them to be the head of the 2.0 instead of the 1.5. Lad McConkey, though, man, like I want to do it. Like I'm not taking him with I don't know that I would love having him as my wide receiver 1, but I think he would be the best wide receiver 2 out there. And if you're looking at the way this draft board would be, and assuming 3 or 4 running backs go in front here, or somebody slides in Brock Bowers, you're like, you know what? Lad McConkey is a wide receiver 2. I would feel great about that.
Absolutely. If I go in the first round, I come away with Nakua or I come away with Neighbors, I'm feeling really good to get Lad as my wide receiver 2. But my issue here is that it's not reflecting that way in the fantasy streets. Folks are out here saying he could be a wide receiver 1 for their roster because the ceiling hasn't been touched yet. But I asked a question just a couple of days ago of like, what if he hit a ceiling? Because again, what is the identity of this Chargers offense? And it's kind of clear that they want to run the ball. So the pass volume is going to go down. Those first 5 weeks before they hit the bye, look, they were at the bottom of the table when it came to pass attempts per game, but they were second in run plays. That is exactly the identity of Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh of what this offense is going to be. And they've shown us that, Rank, this offseason, getting Amari Hampton and Najee Harris. They didn't really have that formula of the running backs with J.K. Dobbins, that's kind of trying to resurge his career, banged up. Gus Edwards, where the heck did he go? And then we talked about our guy, Kamani Vidal, teardrop. But at the end of the day, I just don't feel confident that Lad is going to be able to go further of where we're having him in conversations with some of these guys. I'm taking A.J. Brown over him. I'm taking Drake London. I'm taking Nico. I'm even taking Brian Thomas Jr. over Lad McConkey because I see these guys having the heights of wide receiver 1 production, where Lad, he's just a high-end wide receiver 2, but getting pumped up and pushed up like we always do in the fantasy streets. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, we pushed him up into these top tiers, into these first rounds, and then we get burned. So, like, I'm just a little hesitant on Lad. Not saying he's a bad player, not saying he's going to regress. I think he's just going to mirror what he did last year, which, again, 7 touchdowns, those are fickle. You can't bank on that. You can't predict that. But it's more so of like barely over 1,100 yards, 83 catches, and the rest of your target competition had less than 60 catches. Like, Will Dissly was like the guy at one point. Like, this just tells me, like, his production was situational. It's a situational target situation where people are looking at that and like not identifying that Trey Harris is really good at football. He's a guy.
Right? Oh my gosh. If they ever cut Quentin Johnston, I think that spells doom for the Chargers. Because I feel like they were compelled. I don't know. It's just then you can get another competent receiver in there who could actually catch the football. All right, good call on Lad McConkey. I was doing it for the aesthetics. Shane, can we go to tier 3? Because I wanted to make it a little bit easier for people to digest. And by the way, for those of you who are not watching this and you're listening to it, I will run through it. Tier 3 is where your majority of wide receiver 2s are going to be happening. AJ Brown, who you just mentioned a second ago, Jackson Smith and Jigba, T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, Marvin Harrison Jr., DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, Rashee Rice are these guys in this tier. And again, this is not for anybody who's just joining. I know I'm seeing it now. Like, this is a fantasy thing. This is a fantasy thing. And you're looking at the Bears. I will tell you this. Like, can we just to placate everybody? Because we're getting too many, we're getting inundated too much. People have already bounced. And by the way, I gotta say this too. Is like, I saw somebody tweet out, we were talking about Ashton Genty. They're like, oh, you guys like Ashton Genty? I might have to stop listening to your show. I'm like, because of Ashton Genty. That was so offensive. Like, if I was sitting here and we were like, hey, Jadon Blue should be a first-round draft pick. You might want to hit the eject button.
Eject
I
immediately.
If you're a Commanders fan who's pissed that I picked you to win 7 games, I understand. That's fine. But it was
That's still
Ashton
crazy.
Genty that offense. And by the way, like why I like listening to people. I do feel that in some sense, the fantasy community wants to be an echo chamber, like even more so than politics, where you like a player, like for instance, like Ashton Genty. I am now going to seek out people who also agree with me on Ashton Genty. Hey, Matt Harmon, what do you think about Ashton Genty? I'm not sold. Okay, forget you. Andy Behrens, you like him? Okay, fine. Let's talk about it. And like people do that too much with fantasy. I just implore you. Again, unless it's complete negligence, you don't need to bounce. You can disagree and be like, oh, somebody's drafting Ashton Genty higher than me. That's fine. People feel that way. And in this sense, I got DJ Moore in the top 20. I believe still one of the best wide receivers in the game. I'm not sure that the fantasy production is going to match where I think his skill is. However, I know there's a lot of names. We'll probably get through as many of these as possible, but let's do DJ Moore right now for those of us joining us at the bottom of the hour. Because I love him. And if I end up with, and again, I would love if I'm playing in 3 receiver leagues and he's my third guy, I'm ecstatic, but I'm also not bummed if he's my wide receiver too. How do you feel about the outlook of DJ Moore?
Now, we spoke about the Bears offense and who's on the sticks. It's Ben Johnson. So you love DJ Moore of his versatility. You could send him on a 9 route. You could send him in the jet sweep, a screen, whatever you want to do with that offense to be creative. And I'm going to compare, not talent-wise, but I'm going to compare his role to what Jameson Williams was in Detroit. Because you look at how he was utilized and how he was deployed, like he was more so, all right, run down the line, boom, or jet sweep, boom, we're getting the ball in your hands and you get creative with that. DJ Moore is very elusive. Like that's like one of the underrated traits that he has. Like he's able to bounce off tackles. Like he's able to be a guy that I think that you'll be able to get as your wide receiver 2 and be simply just happy that you got a guy that has that wide receiver 1 upside to match one of the guys that you took in the first 2 rounds. Like if I get a Monron St. Brown and I decide to go running back in the second round and I still end up with DJ Moore, God, that is such a great combination because these guys are on the same playing level and roles and responsibility of importance on their rosters. So that right there, like you look at DJ Moore, he gets underappreciated. I got to think of another wrestler, man, because I said Shane McMahon for Drake London, but it kind of fits more with DJ Moore because how many people downplay his game. Like he is a guy that is a gamer. Finn Balor, there you go, man. Definitely, man. Dolph Ziggler, I love the way he sells. He sells top tier, but at the end of the day, man, like when you get DJ Moore as your wide receiver 2, you should feel very comfortable. And like you said, you get him as a 3, boy, you are cooking with fire.
Yeah, it is one of those things. If I was at the top of a draft, and you got, let's say we just went with Jamar Chase, and by God, you would never get Drake London back, but you never know, man. Fantasy, I love.
I know. I hate to live in a single-minded thought of like, man, I would never get this player. But then when you go to your home leagues or you go to some of these Scott Fishbowl drafts and stuff, like you're able to get these combinations somehow, and you're just like, that's different. I may not be, fully open-minded of like roster building to kind of change things up. So it's like in my Scott Fishbowl, I started off with Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua. How did I get that combination in a 2.5 PPR per reception? I don't know, but I'm going to be dominating on Sundays. That's all I know.
It's so wild. So anybody, if this is your first time watching us here, we've been here all week doing this, breaking it down. I know a lot of people are pivoting to super flex leagues. I would just, as a point of order, now my old thought system in super flex leagues used to be hero QB and then just pick whatever curtain jerker you could get. Now I'm gonna go with 3. I'm gonna go with 3. Like if I don't get Finn Balor, I'm gonna go with Damian Priest and Dominic Mysterio and be like, okay, we're fine with this. I know they're hook up or whatever. I'm fine with that because when we did the tiers for the quarterbacks, and just as a thing of like having, I think Jordan Love, my ranking. These are my rankings. These are not LaQuan. I'm making LaQuan react to what I've done. Just because it's easier to put it up and it's easier for production.
Yeah.
I look at it of like, because I had Jordan Love so far down, and like even then he's not the worst. Like again, like if you went with Jordan Love and Geno Smith, like you could make that work if you have Jamar Chase and Puka Nacua.
Exactly.
Let's stick with the Bears for a second. I know we don't have Roma Dunze up right now, and that's fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's fine.
We did talk about DeAndre Swift during our running back segment yesterday, and we both think that DeAndre Swift can be great. DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, Roma Dunze is going to show up on this list at some point. You got Cole Kmet, who's a pretty capable wide receiver.
Yeah.
Colston Loveland's going to be worked in at some point. Luther Burden III will be worked in at some point. Are there just too many mouths for DJ Moore to be really that reliable in a fantasy sense?
Yes. In a sense, outside of DJ Moore, it's kind of like a lottery. Like who's going to be the next up to get fed? And I think that's a good dynamic to have on an explosive offense that the Bears have, like for real life purposes. For fantasy, it may be a headache because, again, I don't know the exact plans. I don't think anybody knows the exact plans of how the Bears want to attack this season. But one thing for sure is that DJ Moore is the head honcho. Now, Roma Dunze, where a lot of last year, like you saw a lot of his flashes come with him and Caleb. It's like when he's getting the second read or he's getting the looks in the red zone, because Odunze had a high red zone percentage of being targeted, which is great for a rookie trying to get that connection with his rookie quarterback. I think that, the uncatchable targets, he was among some of the guys with that low percentage of catchable targets from Caleb. And I think once we get some structure on that offense, then we'll be able to see the real finished product of what Roma Dunze's ceiling can be. Like right now, we're just out here rolling the dice and hoping that Ben Johnson gets this offense on track. But more so, I'm willing to throw the dice on Roma Dunze because his price in drafts, at least right now, he's like your wide receiver 3 or 4. And at some times, like you already got your first 2 locked up. So again, if we start off with Neighbors and we end up getting Adams, and I get freaking Roma Dunze as my wide receiver 3, I'm sitting butter. Like it's great. Like I'm okay with that. Like I'm not going to be like sitting here panicking, stressing week to week if Roma Dunze is not getting looks or et cetera, et cetera. I have 2 studs, juggernauts that's going to be carrying me to the fantasy championships.
Yeah. And for those of you asking, if you want to take Luther Burden III as one of your last picks, like fine. It's not going to be immediate, if at all. I mean, look at what happened last year with Roma Dunze. Like even if people were as optimistic as I was with Roma Dunze, like it didn't work out from a fantasy sense. And there were some weeks where you're like, maybe the matchup, but it's still, and even with an explosive offense, and I'll tell you something too. I was thinking about this the other night. It's like, if this offense, because like every year Bears fans go into this thing and they're like, hey, the offense should look way better this year. And then week 1, you're like, this is so atrocious. I can't believe if that happens this year, I am going to go to the local Sears. I'm going to buy as many Craftsman tools as possible. I'm going to shove them in my pockets, and then I'm going to walk off the Huntington Beach Pier. And that'll be, you will not see me again. It's fine. I can't deal with it not being good. So I hope it's good. I just have to let you know, like my well-being is hinged on this as I'm discussing it here.
Even 4 weeks.
Yeah, no, week 1. It's gotta be on fire week 1. Somebody who has the exact opposite situation is Jackson Smith and Jigba, who they're like, okay, DK, see it, go to Pittsburgh. Tyler, the ghost of Tyler Lockett is in
the
Tennessee.
realtor. The realtor Tyler Lockett.
You know what's funny is I know we talked when we were talking about Cam Ward. Like I do sort of he's not going to be Tyler Lockett of all, but like just the thought of Tyler Lockett being out there, I think can help them. But Jackson Smith and Jigba is the unequivocal number 1 guy with a new quarterback who just threw for over 4,000 yards. How are we liking Jackson Smith and Jigba?
He's a question mark, and it's not him. It's not talent. It's more so the scheme. Where is he going to live? I mean, are we going to see him exclusively on the perimeter? Are we going to see him in the slot? But then there's a problem. It's like, okay, you have Cooper Kupp in the building now. And again, I don't think Cooper Kupp is on such a huge decline where he's just going out there getting the check and he's washed. I think Cooper Kupp can still play good football. It's just that he's constantly banged up. He's never playing at a full 100%. He's never a guy that, that will go out there and just, ship it. He's going to go out there and try to produce. And I think the fallout with the Rams is like, man, you're not the guy that, you were in 2021. You're not the Triple Crown guy. You're not as fast as you are breaking out the breaks and creating a separation you're doing because you're kind of banged up. That ankle, it's constantly the same injury. So I think there's still confusion of where Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be because he finds most of his fantasy production out of the slot. So that just creates a huge question mark. Like, okay, so are you guys going to split? Because I could see that being counterproductive in a way. And again, you have a new quarterback, Sam Darnold. You have a new called a new play caller. So it's like there's a lot of things that need to come together and mesh very fast. And I don't think one summer camp is going to make that mesh and hit the ground running. So it might be a slow start for JSN. It might, become something beautiful by week 8. But it's like I'm not willing to make that investment, mid-second round when I can pivot to other areas of position or other areas of players that, I don't want to roll that dice on a guy that I just don't know. He might end up just being a high-end wide receiver 2 rather than where he's priced as a wide receiver 1.
No, I get that. And I think it's unfair because you're looking at like Sam Darnold immediately came in and had chemistry with Justin Jefferson and they were amazing, but Justin Jefferson is Justin Jefferson. So I don't know if that's such a fair comparison, but we've seen it. Sam Darnold does have some ability and he understands football and like who needs to get the ball. So that gives me a lot of hope for Jackson Smith-Njigba. I do hope that he's going to get the majority of the targets and all that stuff. It was very difficult though, because speaking of like Ohio State players and a guy that we've mentioned a couple times who I really like as a player, Garrett Wilson, playing with his former college quarterback. Do I have him too low here? Or is he in the right spot? I have him at 14, right below T. Higgins, above Devontae Adams and Marvin Harrison Jr. and DJ Moore.
That's perfect placement for him because this is the first year where we're getting his price where he should actually be priced at, So like, again, you might be coming away. Yeah, like you might be coming away with a solid, wide receiver 2 for your roster, but he can have those spike weeks as the number 1 of that offense, as the guy that has the chemistry with Justin Fields, as a guy that can sit there and be a solid wide receiver 1, maybe a low end wide receiver 1 because of the low pass volume. And then obviously you can't depend on touchdowns, especially with Justin Fields and that tush push that they're probably going to deploy this season. There's a lot of factors that come in, but Garrett Wilson, the talent, Garrett Wilson as the alpha of that offense, he checks off those boxes that can come and contribute for your roster.
No, I'm with you on that. I love him a lot, and I think that he's looking at like past rosters. I think last season I had Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Like that is the greatest August roster. We did the draft in early September, but like that is the greatest feeling walking out of a draft, being like, oh my God, look at this. How do I lose with this wide receiver room? And if it wasn't that, I did have a Drake London, Chris Olave one, Drake London, Garrett Wilson. But Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave sunk a lot of teams. But I think now if you can get him and pair him with Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Puka Nacua, Malik Neighbors, our guy. The thing of it is you can't go with like, because Brian Thomas Jr. is, I put him in this elite tier. But like he, as you pointed out, like that could be this year's Garrett Wilson. I think that would.
It kind of feels that way in a sense. Looking at it now, like it feels very Garrett Wilson like.
I do want to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. We mentioned this when we were talking about Kyler Murray 2 days ago. Kyler Murray, when targeting everybody outside of Marvin Harrison Jr., was amazing. Yep. When he had to throw the ball to Marvin, when he forced it to him, it was awful. Yeah. What do we do with Marvin Harrison Jr.? I still believe that he can be the guy. And I don't want to be too discouraged by what happened last season, but I can't ignore it as well. What do you make of Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Now you have to be careful in these drafts because obviously right now ADPs are going to change, but right now that it doesn't reflect, his ADP because it's looking at Trey McBride going in the mid-second round, and then
Right.
Marvin Harrison falls in that turn in that early third or whatever he lives in the third round. Whereas like that ADP is a little too close for me. Both of these guys can't be productive because we haven't seen this Cardinals offense for the last 2 seasons under Drew Petzing do anything exciting or creative that can support two fantasy relevant pass catchers. And it's always going to be a week to week headache when it comes to Marvin Harrison because that offense is going to live and breathe with Trey McBride. Trey McBride is the function of that offense. And Marvin Harrison, he's just the cherry on top that occasionally shows up where Kyler Murray, again, you pointed it out, he had trouble connecting with him. This hasn't been anything new with him. Like he's had trouble connecting with his wide receiver ones or his wide receiver ones being available when it comes to DeAndre Hopkins, when it comes to Hollywood Brown, et cetera, et cetera. We're now here looking at it like your most productive wide receiver played less than 50% of the snaps. That is Greg Dortch. And we already know what Kyler Murray's passer rating looks like when he's targeting Greg Dortch. We already know the production of the offense and total EPA for all the analytical nerds out there that likes that stuff. Greg Dortch is a guy, but he doesn't get used in two wide receiver sets. And there's not a lot of opportunity for guys to go out there like Michael Wilson to cause a distraction off of Marvin Harrison or Trey McBride. Like it's still a pot that's still trying to brew and cook something, and I'm not ready to invest in it until I have some clarity of what we're looking at come week 1.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting questions with Marvin Harrison Jr. Let me get to two of the veterans. I know we're running up again. This has been, again, like quarterbacks was too easy on day one, but over the last 2 days, we've noticed like, hey, we're running out of time. But you know what? I feel like these are the players that people want to know about. Like,
yeah, these are important.
Listen, it's TV people. Like they always like give us. I don't know. I always feel like we don't spend enough time with the big names. Like we all know to draft Jamar Chase, but it's like the majority of questions that I get are Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson, or what about Puka Nacua? Like, and we always gloss over those guys. So I'm glad that we're able to kind of take a little bit of a deeper dive. I want to talk about these two guys, though. Mike Evans and Tyreek Hill, veteran players. Mike Evans, historically, has been amazing. I think people are fearful of him falling off. Where do we stand with Mike Evans?
This is the Michael Jackson, this is it tour for Mike Evans. And I do feel like, Mike Evans still going to throw up 1,000 yards. I just don't know if this is the season that I could wait on him as a wide receiver one. Like a lot of people used to do that. That used to be the formula. You used to go hero RB and then be able to grab a Mike Evans as your one. I don't know if this is the year that we can have that same formula, but I do think, with Tyreek Hill, this is a guy that I feel like is getting way, way underrated because, again, when the Dolphins offense is on, and this means with Tua healthy on the field, this is a team that is very dangerous, and they score a ton of points. These are 60-yard bombs. These are 70-yard bombs. This is a 20-yard completion turned into a 60-yard touchdown type of offense, and you still have Tyreek Hill, who is still very fast because we just saw him run the 100-meter. He just broke his 18-year-old, record at 10 seconds 19, and then it's looking at like, oh, this guy is still at his peak of speed, and that's his main strength of his trait, and that speed is still climbing with him. And again, when Tua is healthy, we know what this offense can look like. Last year was a complete mess. Them adding Darren Waller, if you're thinking that Darren Waller is going to get the same mirror production as Jonnu Smith, seek help. Because at the end of the day, this was the worst Dolphins offense that we've seen out there on the field, a product that Mike McDaniel has shown us in 2023 can be very dangerous and beneficial for fantasy. So Tyreek Hill, I am snatching him up where I can because if he falls to me, he's a wide receiver 2 next to a CeeDee Lamb or Malik Neighbors or even a Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. This is where he's falling in drafts where people are looking at last season like, oh, man, he's done. He's on a decline. Did you see the numbers? Did you see the entire offense numbers, people? This was terrible, awful. So I'm going to bank on the talent that still exists. And, again, he's going to be a steal.
You know what? I do love that. I think back to last August, one of my early drafts, and I was in one, and I was sitting at, I think it was pick 6, and a friend of mine, she was sitting at pick 5, and we were both talking about Tyreek Hill, and we were both like, oh, you know what? Like we're too far away to get him. And Tyreek Hill ended up falling to number 5. And I remember being like, trying to make a last minute ditch effort to be like, do you just want to swap picks and I'll give you, she's like, no, I really want Tyreek Hill. I think we were 6 and 7. That's how actually it was even more egregious.
Yeah.
Everybody in the world was right. We were wrong. And we were like the 2 experts in this league. It's so funny to me how far he has fallen and how much people overreact to one season of it not working out. Because again, if you end up with Tyreek Hill as your wide receiver 2 or somehow as your wide receiver 3, you're going to love that so much. And even though I do have him down here, again, he's in this tier of if I might get in the heat of battle and pick Tyreek Hill over Jackson Smith and Jigba, considering how many shares I have of NSN and all that stuff, JSN, excuse me. So it really is, again, a great value. Let's throw up tier 4. I'm going to just read this off real quick, just for people who are wondering, because this is where I don't want to say these are dart throws, but you're taking some risk here. Don't let these guys be your wide receiver 1 because your draft has gone horribly. Terry McLaurin, who I feel popped a little bit, and you got Debo this year, and DK Metcalf. We'll see what happens with his chemistry with Aaron Rodgers, Cortland Sutton, Zay Flowers, Devonta Smith, Tet McMillan, Calvin Ridley, Jamison Williams, Xavier Worthy. So we got 2 of the Chiefs wide receivers in the top 30, and then Jalen Waddle would be our number 30 guy. Real quick, Ted McMillan. This is an interesting one to me because rookie wide receivers are always going to be inherently risky. However, for some of the situations that we were talking about with, JSN and Malik Neighbors, not a ton of competition, unless you consider the ghost of Adam Thielen and some of the other guys there in Carolina is competition. What do you make of Ted McMillan?
Now, here's the thing. This is all about roster building. I know folks are going to throw those dart throws at the rookies because every year we have a handful of rookies that end up being fantasy stars or fantasy studs. This situation is more so I'm hands off because we are optimistic about Bryce Young in this offense just based on how he performed the back end of the last season coming off of being bench. We still have question marks about this Panthers offense. This is still not an offense that we could put up there in conversation with, let's say the Texans or with the Jaguars. Like they're still right at the bottom. We're still trying to figure out, is Bryce Young going to be able to step up and be the quarterback they need? This reflects off of, Tet McMillan, Xavier Legette, Adam Thielen, Jalen Coker. I mean, Chuba Hubbard gets involved in the passing game. This is still wide open for the wide receiver 1. People are already crowning Tetherell McMillan as the wide receiver 1, as the number 1 target, just because they got a wide receiver high in the draft. And this is what gets so weird in the fantasy streets, Rank. Pre-draft, Tetherell McMillan was slow. He's injury prone. He didn't do the combine. Yeah. He's this, he's that. He's a bad wide receiver. But then as soon as he gets drafted to a bad team, he automatically becomes like this fantasy stud, this fantasy guy that you need to have. He's a wide receiver 1. Where are the draft analysts? Like, where are the draft folks? Like, where does this overlap? And then it gets all mixed up in the pot. Whereas, like, this is just showing me, like, again, I'm staying far away. I don't need to draft a Panthers wide receiver where I feel as though he's going to be top 12, top 15, top 25. I just don't feel comfortable doing it because we have no idea what this offense is yet.
The most vocal critic of Ted McMillan coming into the draft was a legend for the team that Ted eventually ended up on, Steve Smith Sr. Did not like Ted McMillan. As a matter of fact, was getting into like verbal spars with his receivers coach and things of that nature. And Steve Smith Sr. is somebody who I do trust and I rely on and I talk to, and I'm like, okay, like I'm good. Like if Steve doesn't like him, I don't like him. I actually really liked Marcus Golden better. And if you went back and checked out my mock draft with a twist where it was not fantasy related, it was just more of like, here's the player you should take. I said that Marcus Golden would be a better player for you. We'll see how that ends up. Marcus Golden also did not go to a good situation. Well, I mean, he's fine. He's a better team with a quarterback that's a little bit more proven, but at the same time, but that's just such a schmaz there. Like it's a stable of mid-carders. You're like, okay, the League of Nations back in the day. We're like, all right, these guys are fine. Although one time I really pissed off Sheamus one time because I was wearing a Rusev Day shirt at the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
I was in Phoenix.
Of course
so
you were.
I was hanging out with Eric Young, and so we got to meet all these wrestlers and be like, hey, so now we're in the inner circle here. And Sheamus was like, hey, I knew that guy. Like he was jokingly. And I said, yeah, League of Nations. I loved it. And he's like, I'm out of here. And I kept telling EY, I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry. I legitimately, and my friend who's with me is like, we really like the league. Like Rusev, like Wade Barrett, like Sheamus. Alberto Del Rio was the only one.
That's elite.
He sucked. But in any event, I guess this is the long way of saying that the thing of it is it's hard to not acknowledge the opportunity. And I think that where we're at in this part of the draft, I'm acknowledging opportunity. I truly believe he's going to go a lot higher than a lot of these names. I feel like there's going to be some kooky person in your fantasy draft who's like, you know what? I'm taking Ted McMillan over Tyreek Hill. And you're going to be like, yeah, good luck. Godspeed. I'll be like President Whitmore.
The strategy is to draft Adam Thielen. He's like wide receiver 60 something, 70 right now on Underdog. And it's like, I'm going to go with old man Thielen because look how he finished the back end of the season coming back from injury. He was a top 15 wide receiver. Yeah. I can get that undrafted. Sure. I'll take old man Thielen.
I feel like it's a draft Adam Thielen. Somebody's going to get so pissed that they drop Ted McMillan early on in the year. And then Ted McMillan finishes strong. And he'll end up being like the waiver wire pickup of the year. I could see that happening.
Exactly. My rule is, because I learned the hard way, I dropped Justin Jefferson those first 2 weeks for Robbie Chosen. Now, Robbie Chosen, he ended up as a top 25 wide receiver that year. But I dropped Justin Jefferson. You never, ever, and I repeat, never, ever, if you draft a rookie, never drop him. Stick with him. Stay in your grab.
You can't. And that's why everybody lost last year with Roma Dunze. No, but it's Ted McMillan, where this would be in a 12-team league, he would be your wide receiver 3. And I think that where you were drafted, him and Calvin Ridley, and we talked about this when we were talking about the Titans, the opportunity, wide receiver 3, I'm drafting opportunity. And if I have Calvin Ridley, I would end up getting Adam Thielen. And if I had Ted McMillan, I would probably find somebody else at the end of the draft to be like, this guy might have to hold it, like Tyler Lockett the first couple of weeks might be special or something like that. But listen, we're up against it. We're running out of time once again. This has been a lot of fun, and we do appreciate everybody who's been joining us. And for those of you who have never gotten an opportunity to listen to LaQuan Jones, say hello. He's right there. He's a nice guy. He does great work. He does great work for us at the NFL Network. He also has a sick podcast, LA Rams, which is a lot of fun. He also does the sick podcast, Man United. No, I'm just kidding.
No, hey, we can get that going.
No, I was joking. I had actually told our producers, I said, if the Bears hired Mike McCarthy, I was just going to start an Arsenal podcast. Which, by the way, every day I wake up and Victor Yukirish is trending, and now it looks like they're probably not going to. I hate the transfer window in the Premier League. But listen, in any event, we are going to have the tight ends tomorrow, same time. Yeah. Greg Braggs will be back next week, and we'll also talk about my predictions at some point. But you know what? Marinate on that. Go check out the Jim Rome After Hour. I've been talking about it there too as well. Check out LaQuan, not only for spot appearances on the NFL Network, he's on the NFL Fantasy Podcast along with Marcus Grant and Mike Florio. Is it the guy or is it the PFT guy?
No, it's the guy, the good Michael Florio.
Okay,
Michael F.
Michael F. Florio. Anyways, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate all the time and all the love. I know that you had a lot of questions. A lot of them were like, why isn't DJ Moore hired? Listen, Fantasy Island's not going away. We'll be breaking it out again this season. It's going to be something that's going to be in a rotation this season. And we'll be able to go. We'll start doing sleepers and stuff. So I know that we spent a lot of time with the stars, but I feel like that was very important as you're getting ready for your drafts over the next couple of weeks. So for LaQuan, I'm Adam. And Shane, just go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much.